What if I told you that NFL players used to use glue? Or that you're not allowed to fart? These are NFL rules you didn't know existed. And first up, I bet you didn't know that it's illegal to dunk a ball. You probably didn't even know that dunking was an option. Back in 2014, Jimmy Graham would dunk every time he scored. And it wasn't a problem until he dunked a little too hard. Well, that's not supposed to happen. And since Jimmy broke a goalpost in the middle of the game, the NFL had to pass the Jimmy Graham rule. Basically, if any player dunks or hangs on the crossbar, they get a 15-yard penalty and a fine. But they aren't the only pair of palms that changed the NFL. Because in 1981, Lester Hayes was so nasty at catching passes, the NFL had to make a rule to stop him. But it wasn't just about his hands. It was about what he put on his hands.
He would take stickum all over the forearms, all over that tape to make it a real sticky surface, and he would put it on the inside of his sock on each side, and that was his supply during the course of a game. When he needed stickum, he reached down and get the stickum off his sock.
That's honestly genius. And it definitely worked, because he led the league with 13 interceptions in 1980 and won Defensive Player of the Year. His opponents literally called him the human glue.
He bathed in it. He absolutely wore it. I mean, he just put stuff all over him.
But unsurprisingly, the league got fed up Lester covering himself in concrete. So in 1981, they banned stickum league-wide with the Lester Hayes rule. Players found a workaround today with sticky gloves, so that clearly didn't work too well. Some players will always find a way to get around a rule, like the illegal leverage rule. It basically says you can't block a field goal by shoving other players. And that seems like something pretty obvious, but not for the Patriots in 2013, because when the Jets were attempting a field goal, Patriots lineman tried to shove his teammate forward and steamroll his way into blocking the kick. And when the refs saw that, they used the illegal leverage rule for the first time ever. So the Jets got another attempt and won the game off a rule that had never been used. I'm actually shocked that Brady didn't crash out on the sidelines after that. And if you can't use your buddy as a human shield, then what's the next workaround? How about just go solo? Which is exactly what Cam Chancellor started doing.
He did. He gets back there and he blocks it. It's wide.
Dude hurdled the whole line like he was trying out for the Olympics. But when the NFL saw the clips, they imagined what could go wrong when a 230-pound safety mistimes the jump. So they introduced the no leaping rule just because Cam found a way to cheat the system. Now if you want to block a field goal, you're going to have a LeBron vertical. But the Raiders pulled something so out of pocket, the NFL had to literally invent a new rule just to stop it from happening again. See, during the final seconds of the 1978 Raiders-Chargers game, the Raiders were down, and QB Ken Stabler got swallowed up by the pass rush. But instead of just taking the sack, Stabler goes, screw it, and just chucks the ball forward.
He can't. The ball flips forward. It's a wild scramble. 2 seconds on the clock.
That play was so insane, even one of the announcers is just losing it. And even though the Chargers were about to start a riot over it, the refs let it stand.
They're saying it's a touchdown? You gotta be kidding.
He was never too complimentary about my officiating.
Bro, I can see why. Those players are basically kicking the ball into the end zone. And you call that a touchdown? Well, yeah, because on that play, the Raiders straight up invented the forward fumble. That level of absurdity wasn't allowed long, though. And the next year, the NFL rewrote the rulebook to add the Holy Roller rule. Inside the last 2 minutes of either half, only the actual fumbling player can advance the ball. So even though those first Raider players got away with murder, the accidental roll is officially banned. At least Stabler eventually admitted there was no accident.
You convinced us that you didn't slip that ball underhand?
No, I can't convince you of that, because I did. I mean, what else was I going to do with it? Throw it out there. Shake the dice.
It only took him 30 years, but it only took 1 year for the NFL to make one of the weirdest rules of all time. See, in 2015, the Denver Broncos had one of the most disgusting defenses in football, with Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, and Aqib Talib. These guys weren't just nasty on the defense, they were being nasty off field, because they were farting all day long. Von Miller in particular was ripping so much ass, they had to drop fart tax on him. So every time his body hit the Chipotle button,
I'll pay the $100.
Broncos management would slap him with legit fines. And I'm tying at his tweet trying to explain himself. They can't find me if I get up and walk away. It's not healthy. I keep trying to tell them it's not healthy if I just sit there and hold it in. Nobody in the world does that. I just do it more than the average person. Listen, it's a valid crash out. But if you're doing it so often, you got a rule invented for it? Drink some Pedialyte, bro. Like, seriously. Fart tax ain't the only NFL rule that straight up stinks. Because in 2007, one of the most obscure rules ever was used to cancel out a fumble. When the Bears and Eagles play, Bears QB Brian Griese was getting ready to take the snap and lines up under center. But what he calls hike, the snap comes in low and the ball slips straight through his legs.
Snap goes behind Griese and the play is blown dead. but their penalty marker is thrown down at the 40-yard line.
On the outside, it looks just like a normal turnover to the Eagles. Then the refs throw a flag and call false start for real. Because buried deep into the abyss of the NFL rulebooks is one of the strangest clauses in history that states, if a QB is under center and the snap goes between his legs, he has to be the very next player to touch it. If anyone else does, it's a false start on the offense. What? If you're confused, don't worry. So are the announcers, fans, coaches, and even the players.
You know, I looked at the Jumbotron, the replay, and I never touched the ball. I guess there were some chunks in the middle of the field, and Olin went to snap the ball, and the nose of the ball got caught in the chunks of the grass. So, I've never experienced that ruling before.
So you can imagine the level of rage that Philly got to, because that was the only time the rule was ever used. So after that game, the NFL very quietly stopped enforcing it. But they definitely didn't stop enforcing this next rule, because unless you were watching this Broncos-Chargers game for whatever reason, you've definitely never heard of the fair catch kick. Mainly because up until 2024, the last time one was made was 1974. Here's how it works. If your team calls a fair catch on a punt instead of running a play, you can line up right there and go for a field goal. The defense can't rush, the ball isn't snap, and so the kicker just gets a free swing at 3 points. Sounds like something that should be done almost every punt, right? Wrong, because you need the punt to land exactly on a yard line where a field goal is even possible, and barely have any time left on the clock. But in 2024, after Darius Davis got nailed on a punt return, the Chargers opted to go for it.
They can either snap the ball or they can do a free kick for a field goal, which we haven't seen in forever.
Not only did he hit this kick for the first time in 50 years, he hit the longest one ever. The fair catch kick isn't even the rarest type. That would be the drop kick. At this point, the drop kick rule isn't even rare. It's just straight up extinct. That's probably because the drop kick made sense back when football helmets were made of leather. See, back in the early 20th century, pigskins were rounder, more like a rugby ball. That shape made the bounce more predictable, so drop kicks were actually pretty common. On an extra point, the kicker would just drop the ball, let it hit the grass, and boot it through the uprights. But as the football got pointier, the bounce got way too unpredictable. So the last successful drop kick was all the way back in 1941. Then out of nowhere, during the Patriots-Dolphins game, Patriots kicker Doug Flutie ran out for what looked like a normal extra point. And just like that, the drop kick made a return.
It is up and in. Can you believe that?
You know you did something right if you got Belichick smiling, which might actually be rarer than the actual kick. Because even though it's been attempted a few times since then, if you missed it in 2006, you might have missed it for good. But you also might have missed this random as hell rule the NFL made in 2023, when they banned high-fiving a cameraman that the player knows.
Oh, he smoked him!
The NFL are straight clowns to be mad at Tyreek for doing that. But the biggest punishment was to the cameraman, because they suspended his license to film at Dolphins games indefinitely, all for participating in the celebration. Yeah, the No Fun League strikes again, because the NFL is known to ban basically anything cool just because they can. In the early 2010s, this even included face masks, but not just any face masks, customized ones. And these things were straight up badass. They made dudes like Justin Tuck, Darnell Dockett, and even Ray Lewis look like the goddamn Predator. But they didn't just look dope, they made it even safer for players with neck injuries.
My mask was created because I had a neck injury and a shoulder injury. And it's funny because they talk about safety, but since I've worn the mask, I haven't had any problems out of my neck or in my shoulder. So for me, that mask is very important to keeping me safe on the football field.
Well, apparently not safe enough for the NFL, so they just banned them all in 2014. And that wasn't the first time they tried being the fashion police, because back in the 90s, Neon Deion made wearing a bandana under his helmet iconic.
I've been doing that since I was a shorty, so it's not like I changed. That was me for real when nobody was looking. That's who I was.
The thing was, the league hated it, so they banned that too. Bruh, these NFL execs 100% asked the teacher about homework at the end of the day. But the weirdest thing they made illegal? Nike Maxite contact lenses. They're discontinued now, which honestly makes the ban even funnier. But when they were selling, they could have been a game changer for all players, because they were designed to reduce glare at night and basically give players night vision goggles for football. But the No Fun League called it an unfair advantage. So instead of just, let everyone use them, they banned them outright. What a bunch of squares. Not only that, these squares made a rule so insane, it literally changed the entire course of NFL history. Because this rule basically made Tom Brady, Tom Brady. See, the tuck rule was introduced in 1999, and it was said that if a quarterback's arm was moving when he lost the ball, it wasn't a fumble, it was an incomplete pass. And that probably seems like a tiny detail until you fast forward to the 2002 AFC Divisional Playoffs. It was the fourth quarter, under 2 minutes, with a Pats down 3. Tom Brady drops back, pump fakes, and then takes a hit from Charles Woodson and loses the ball. Game over. Except it wasn't, because when the refs huddled up to review, they decided that Brady's arm moved forward and the tuck rule came into effect, meaning an incomplete pass. And even though it clearly was a fumble, the Patriots kept the ball and won in overtime. Yeah, that's not an incomplete pass. Even Tom Brady himself admits it.
You forced it into a pass. Had you tackled me, that was a little That was a little Here, hit the ball out of my hands, just like this. That's where. Thank you. If the ball was tucked, look what would have happened.
All right.
I'd have held on to the ball. Doesn't take much pressure to knock it out at that point. Go ahead. Fumble.
And apparently, the NFL even agreed, so they got rid of the rule in 2013. But if you think that was wild, the league also has a rule for something way more basic, the weather. And you probably know that the NFL makes players play through any weather. But you didn't know the one rule on weather that will stop a game. It's not the extreme cold. The Ice Bowl of 1967 was played at negative 13 degrees. Rain and floods? Nope. The Vikings and Rams played the Mud Bowl 77, and the Jaguars and Panthers played the Tsunami Bowl in 2011. A blizzard maybe? Also no. The Bills and Colts played through a whiteout in 2017, where you literally couldn't see the yard markers. It's a thunderstorm. Yeah, the NFL is scared of thunder, more importantly, lightning. If lightning is detected within 8 miles of the stadium, the game is immediately suspended and everybody goes home. Ice, rain, wind, fog, blizzards? Just walk it off. But if Thor starts making plays, nobody else will be for the rest of the day. But funnily enough, there's something the league's even stricter about. Gambling. These days, it seems like everyone is gambling. But in 2021, it hit another level when an NFL player tried to get in on the action. Because when Calvin Ridley took a break from the Falcons to focus on his mental health, he suddenly had a lot of time on his hands. But instead of using that time to train or spend time with family, he decided to actually make use of his time off and started placing bets. $1,500 worth of bets. Sure, it's not exactly Dana White levels of spending, but the problem wasn't the amount. It was that he was placing bets on his own team. So the league came down hard, suspending him for the entirety of the 2022 season and causing him to lose $11 million in salary. All for bets that wouldn't even cover a Super Bowl ticket. But while Calvin was breaking the most random rules ever, in 2025, one rookie got a rule literally invented for him. Because when the Browns drafted Shedeur Sanders, he signed a standard 4-year rookie deal worth about $4.6 million. But underneath all the fine print came something new, the Prime Equity Clause. Basically, it ties Shedeur's brand to the team in ways no rookie has ever had before. He'll receive out of the $250 million in jersey sales, $14 million of that. And on top of that, he'll also get long-term leverage if he hits certain performance and marketing benchmarks. No other rookie's ever gotten it. And honestly, that only exists because his dad is Deion Sanders. But rookies aren't the only players getting rules made for them. One NFL rule is so rare, it only applies to one player, Patrick Mahomes. Because he's literally not allowed to run a QB sneak. Yeah, it sounds insane, but there's a reason. See, back in 2019, Mahomes tried a simple quarterback sneak on 4th and 1 against the Broncos. And while he did slip out on the other side for the first down, something else also slipped out. His kneecap. Even though he tough-guyed his way through it and won the Super Bowl, which, what a madman by the way, Andy Reid quietly made a rule. No more QB sneaks for Mahomes. Doesn't matter if it's 3rd and inches or if the Super Bowl is on the line. If Kansas City needs to get some last-second yardage, they'll call in Andy Reid before risking Mahomes again. But one quarterback's injury was so important, it didn't just change his gameplay, it changed the gameplay of the entire NFL. And even if you don't know the rule, you know that QB was Tom Brady. Because he's probably the only QB that would get the NFL to change. And it all happened back in Week 1 of 2008. It was Patriots versus Chiefs, early in the first quarter, with basically nothing on the line. Then, Bernard Pollard, the Patriot killer, made the move that gave him his name.
Brady, with time, hit as he throws the ball. That is Tom Brady got hit right on the knee.
It's definitely a blink and you'll miss it moment, but when you slow it down, I'm no doctor, but I know your knee is not supposed to do that. But it wasn't just a dislocated knee like Mahomes. It was a full ACL tear out of literally left field. The reigning MVP, the face of the NFL, was gone on opening weekend. So in the very next offseason, the NFL created what is known as the Brady Rule. From that point on, defenders were banned from making low hits on quarterbacks in the pocket. To this day, every time a defender even sneezes on a QB, flags start flying. And even though that's annoying as hell, it's nowhere near as annoying and game-ruining as the Calvin Johnson rule. Because back in 2010, if a receiver caught a ball, it only counted as a reception if the receiver maintained control of the ball all the way through making contact with the ground. And while that might seem basic, it was enforced in some of the craziest touchdown robberies ever, obviously starting with Calvin Johnson.
It appears to be a game-winning touchdown catch. The ball comes loose. As you can see it is ruled an incomplete pass.
Yeah, since he didn't complete the process of hitting the ground and standing up with the ball, that was ruled as an incomplete pass. Listen, there's a reason why fans call it the dumbest rule in football. But even though it's named after Calvin Johnson, the most infuriating example of it was in 2014 during the divisional playoffs. Cowboys versus Packers, fourth quarter, fourth down, with Dallas in desperate need of a touchdown. So Tony Romo drops back and heaves a bomb to Dez Bryant.
There's one down the sideline. Pass caught by Dez Bryant. They're going to mark him inside the 1.
Even if you're just learning why that didn't count, there's no way you forgot this play. Because unlike Calvin, Dez did hit the ground with full control of the ball. It was only after rolling that the ball floated out. But that was still enough for the refs to call the pass incomplete. There was a turnover on downs, and the Packers won. This time, the fan outrage was so loud that the NFL Competition Committee finally gave the rulebook another look and rewrote the rule entirely. But they kind of didn't need to, because way down deep in the NFL rulebook is something called Rule 17. And underneath it lies the Palpably Unfair Act rule. And this is the craziest rule of all time, because it says that if a player, coach, or even a fan does something ridiculously unfair, not something already covered in the rules, the refs can step in and basically make things right. That means penalties, corrections, or in the most extreme cases, literally giving out a free touchdown. But this rule isn't just a joke in the NFL. There's actually a precedent. Well, kinda. Because the most recent example wasn't even in the NFL. It was college. In the 1954 Cotton Bowl, Rice was playing Alabama. And on one play, Rice's running back Dickie Mangle broke free for a 95-yard touchdown run. But as he was about to score, a benched Alabama player suddenly sprinted onto the field and leveled poor Dickie on the play of his life. Which sounds about right for Bama. But it sounded so wrong to the refs that they decided to give out the touchdown anyway. And that was Rule 17 in action. The NFL's had its own close calls with it, like with the Jets coach Sal Alosi in 2010.
Watch the knee here being stuck out on purpose to trip up Nolan Carroll.
Or when Mike Tomlin interrupted a potential touchdown run for the Ravens.
And Tomlin is essentially on the field here, and you just wonder, he's trying to get out of the way, but did that force Jacoby Jones to lean back into the tackle?
With that shit-eating grin, he knew exactly what he was doing. But the most famous example of Rule 17 not being used was during the 2018 NFC Championship between the Saints and the Rams.
Pass is incomplete, no flag.
There was no pass interference called on that play. And you might be thinking, well, the refs were the problem, so Rule 17 couldn't be enforced. But the thing about Rule 17 is, if the unfair act is egregious enough, the commissioner himself can step in and enforce it. That's a next-level nuclear button. But with so many unfair acts happening in football, that Rule 17 is basically just a legend at this point. We would need to see a nationwide scandal for it to even be valid. And honestly, that just doesn't happen anymore.